My name is Chelsea Norton, and I'm 39 years old, but the day that defines me happened 22 years ago, when I was just 17 and still in the 11th grade. It was the day my parents decided I wasn't worth being their daughter anymore. I can still see the living room in our Austin home as if I were standing there now, the beige carpet, the ticking of the clock, the smell of my mother's perfume lingering in the air. I had just shown them the pregnancy test, my hands trembling but my voice steady. I thought maybe, just maybe, they'd surprise me with compassion. Instead, my father's face turned to stone. "You're no daughter of ours anymore," he said, each word landing like a hammer. His tone wasn't raised, but the coldness cut deeper than if he had shouted. He straightened his watch as if this conversation was just another business meeting gone wrong, his eyes refusing to meet mine. My mother didn't yell either, that almost made it worse. She simply looked at her nails and said, "We expected better from you, Chelsea, not this kind of mess that will ruin our name." Her words were sharp, precise, and final. Then came the moment I'll never forget. My father reached for the family photo that had always sat on the mantel, a picture of the three of us smiling during better times. He turned it face down without a word. The click of the frame against the wood echoed in my chest like a door slamming shut. They gave me 10 minutes to pack, 10 minutes to erase 17 years of being their daughter. I left with a small bag of clothes, a few crumpled bills from my savings, and the necklace my grandmother had once given me. The front door locked behind me with a snap that sounded like the end of everything I'd ever known. I thought Derek Sloan, the boy I loved, would at least stand by me. He had whispered promises of forever under the stars at prom, his arm tight around my waist like nothing could break us. But when I told him, his voice went cold. "I can't do this, Chelsea," he said, and within days his number was blocked. His parents' lawyers even sent a letter, denying everything and threatening me if I dared contact him again. Just like that, the boy who had been my escape turned into another closed door. The streets of Austin became my new home. I slept on benches in Zilker Park, my body curled up against the humid night air. Hunger gnawed at me and the stares of strangers burned like flames. Every rejection carved another scar into me. My parents' dismissal, Derek's abandonment, the judgment of passers-by. But somewhere in that darkness a seed took root. I whispered to myself that I would not be destroyed. I would rise, not with bitterness that consumes, but with a strength they could never imagine. They had slammed the door, but I would find another way through. I was weeks into street life when I met the woman who would change everything. I was sitting outside a cafe, hungry and exhausted, when a car pulled up. Sleek, black, the kind I'd only ever seen in magazines. Out stepped Kayla Rhodess, a woman in her late 50s, dressed in a navy suit that spoke of elegance and power. But it wasn't her wealth that caught me. It was her eyes. They weren't pitying. They were steady, assessing, and strangely kind. She handed me a sandwich, but instead of walking away like most people, she sat down. "You look like you've got fight in you," she said, "but fight without focus will burn you alive." Those words sank into me like water into parched soil. For the first time since being cast out, I felt seen, not as a mistake, not as a burden, but as a human being worth saving. Kayla was a widow, she told me later, who had built her fortune in hospitality. She didn't hand me charity. Instead, she offered shelter in her guest house, meals at her table, and, most importantly, mentorship. She taught me survival, but not just in the sense of food and shelter. Kayla believed survival meant patience, strategy, and turning pain into power. "Your parents and that boy took everything from you," she told me one night as we sipped tea. "So take everything they gave you, anger, shame, despair, and use it as fuel. Learn, work, build, that is how you win." I began working at one of her hotels, starting at the bottom, changing sheets, scrubbing bathrooms, running trays of food. At first, I resented the work, but Kayla made sure I saw the lessons. Notice the guests. She said how they speak, what they expect, how they react when things go wrong. Business is about people, not just profit. Over time, I moved from cleaning rooms to assisting at the front desk, then shadowing managers. I learned about customer relations, schedules, budgets, and the thousand small details that keep an empire alive. Each step forward wasn't just a job, it was a stitch mending the torn fabric of my identity, and along the way, I found family, Sean Barrett, one of Kayla's trusted attorneys, became a brother figure to me. He was sharp, but unlike Derek's world of lies, Sean carried integrity like armor. Then there was Shannon Lyall, a young IT consultant Kayla hired. Shannon was quick-witted, with a laugh that broke through my guarded shell, and she introduced me to the digital tools that would later become crucial in my own ventures. Together, they became my chosen family, the kind built on loyalty, not blood. Life, however, tested me again. My first pregnancy ended in heartbreak, the hospital's sterile lights blurring with my tears. But Kayla held me and said, "Love isn't measured in biology, Chelsea. It's measured in what you give." When I was ready, I adopted a baby boy. I named him Austin, not after my pain, but after the city that had tried to break me and unknowingly gave me the strength to rebuild. Austin Norton became my reason, my anchor. I raised him with a blend of discipline and tenderness, determined that he would never feel the abandonment I had. From despair, I had found hope. From exile, I had built a mission. With Kayla's guidance and the family I chose, I was no longer just surviving. I was preparing to rise. Raising Austin was the greatest project of my life. He wasn't just my son. He was my partner in resilience, the living proof that broken beginnings don't decide the ending. From the time he was small, I saw sparks in him: curiosity, focus, a hunger for learning that reminded me of Kayla's sharp eyes. By the time he was 12, he was already tinkering with code. By 16, he was building apps that caught attention at state competitions. Shannon nurtured his talent, feeding him books on programming and cybersecurity, while Sean drilled into him the importance of contracts and protecting intellectual property. I supplied the discipline, late nights studying, clear goals, and the reminder that brilliance means nothing without character. Austin thrived. He didn't just win competitions, he started to make real money. His apps gained investors. His name began appearing in tech blogs, and I made sure the right people heard. It wasn't difficult to let news of his success drift back into my parents' circle. Old acquaintances still whispered, and Austin's accomplishments spread like wildfire in the very city where I had once been cast out. I wanted them to know. I wanted them to ache with the irony that the daughter they threw away had raised a son the world admired. It didn't take long. Patrick and Andrea reappeared first. They came dressed in contrition, their voices dripping with a syrupy regret that never touched their eyes. "Chelsea, we've been thinking of you," my mother said in a message, the kind laced with biblical quotes about forgiveness. My father added, "Family is all that matters in the end. We'd love to reconnect." Not far behind came Derek. He sent an email, polished and hollow, saying he deeply regretted the past and wanted to be part of our son's life. He didn't say Austin's name. He called him our son, as if erasing 2 decades of silence with 3 words. Once I would have screamed. Once I would have thrown their words back in their faces. But Kayla had taught me, rage is fuel, but strategy wins wars. So I smiled and I played along. I answered just enough to keep them interested, my tone polite, my words carefully crafted. I invited them to reveal themselves, to expose the hunger that pulsed beneath their feigned remorse. And they did. The calls became more frequent, filled with not-so-subtle questions about Austin's earnings, his investors, his plans for the future. Emails dripped with flattery followed by veiled requests. Maybe we could all start a family business together. Think of the legacy we could build. Social media posts appeared, my parents suddenly waxing poetic about forgiveness and family unity, tagging me as though hashtags could rewrite history. What they didn't know was that Shannon was tracing every post, every digital breadcrumb, building a map of their manipulations. Sean was quietly preparing the legal groundwork, ensuring that when the time came, their own words would bury them. And me, I stayed calm. I nodded, I responded with grace, I gave them rope. Every fake apology, every greedy slip of the tongue became another knot in the trap. I wasn't seeking to destroy them with fire. No, I was going to let the truth destroy them, piece by piece, until the world saw them for what they really were. The trap was set. The night of Austin's big tech summit, it arrived like a sunrise I had been waiting decades to see. The ballroom glittered with chandeliers, cameras flashed, and reporters buzzed with anticipation. Austin, now a young man radiating confidence, stood ready to present his newest innovation to investors and visionaries. But the sum, it wasn't just about technology, it was the stage I had chosen for truth. As the applause died down after Austin's presentation, the lights dimmed and a screen lit up behind him. The audience expected product highlights. Instead, they saw Kayla Rhodess, recorded years before she passed away. Her voice, warm and commanding, filled the room. Family is who stands by you, not who claims you when you shine. The room stilled. I glanced at my parents and Derek, seated in the front row like actors waiting for their cue. Their smiles faltered as the next slides appeared. Legal documents, the adoption papers proving I had raised Austin alone. Hospital records confirming my expulsion from my parents' home at 17. Even a notarized account from Kayla herself, detailing how she found me homeless and helped me rebuild. Gasps echoed, cameras clicked. Then came the emails, projected in sequence. My parents' carefully worded forgiveness notes that slid into demands for money. Derek's messages laced with veiled threats of lawsuits and claims to Austin's success. Shannon had curated it all with precision, exposing every manipulative line. The narrative was clear. They weren't here for reconciliation. They were here for profit. I stepped onto the stage, my voice steady. For those wondering, no, Derek Sloan is not Austin's father. Austin is adopted. I chose him and he chose me, which means any claim these people make is built on lies. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the ripple of whispers across the room. Reporters scribbled furiously. Investors glanced sideways at my parents, their reputations unraveling in real time. Derek's face flushed red. He muttered to his lawyer, but Sean had already anticipated every move. Legal injunctions were filed that night, barring all three from contact with me or Austin ever again. Their downfall wasn't explosive, it was surgical. Their reputations collapsed under the weight of truth. Derek faced fraud investigations for his schemes, while Patrick and Andrea became pariahs in the very social circles they once worshipped. And me, I didn't celebrate their ruin. My victory was never about their destruction. It was about the life I had built in spite of them. That night, I announced the creation of the Kayla Rhodess Foundation, dedicated to supporting single mothers and young women abandoned as I once was. Kayla's voice would not only live on in me, it would lift others from the streets into the light. Months later, I stood in a garden blooming with white roses, hand in hand with Sean Barrett, the man who had been my steadfast ally and now my husband. Austin stood beside us, tall and proud, no longer the child I once sheltered, but the man I had raised to thrive. The moral is simple. True strength is not found in revenge alone. It is found in building a life so bright, so unshakable, that betrayal becomes a shadow in the sunlight of your triumph. Blood does not make a family. Love, loyalty, and resilience do. And in that truth, I finally found my peace.